Thank you very much, Chaim. Anka, please.
Yes, thank you. I have another example. It goes maybe in a same direction. I think always practitioners formulate current problems and hope for a quick solution, and while the scientists usually look for a future-oriented solution, and there is a gap between it. Nevertheless, the embedding of practitioners' perspective is, from our view, very important. With a short example, when new tablets are provided in the petrol cars, it turns out that there are no shelves for the power, and its supply there's no place in the car to put the tablet somewhere, and also the officers couldn't put the tablet into their I don't know how you said, uniform, into their uniform. There is no place. The tablets are too big for the short pockets on the uniform. So they didn't use it. And so we couldn't give them information in time. Also because the Wi-Fi is not everywhere in the cars and not everywhere in the cities of Hanover or elsewhere, not at the countryside. So this is why I think the perspective of human-centered design is very important. We have also another example. We've got our, we developed an app, Peaceful in the Future. It is a nationwide implementation of a non-public app for women affected by domestic violence. And the biggest problem here is that the police didn't develop the app, and it comes from outside. This is another problem. This is also the problem that you are not inside the system. You come from outside and you have to bring something inside the system, and then you have a power problem because you're not part of the structure, and you can't bring this very effectful app to the people, to the women who need them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I've got mine's a bit more holistic in terms of policing in general. Within policing in general, we tend to jump to a solution. So we don't tend to spend a lot of time really looking at the problem and how the problem affects people. We tend to love to rush to an idea, a kind of response, a solution. There's often really good ideas within policing developed from years of research, years of practice, years of knowledge for some people, but they often fail. These good ideas and projects often fail at implementation phase, and that often occurs if we look at that, and I must admit we probably need to look at that more in detail. It often happens because we don't involve the end user in the solution. We tend to forget that the community may be the end user of some of our solutions, and we rarely involve the community in understanding what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve. And so, and we tend to do that to our workforce, as Anka's just described eloquently there, around solutions that we think are absolutely great. The technology behind them might be fantastic, but perhaps, as she mentioned, the size isn't great. And we just haven't really checked that with the end user. So involving the end user is critical, and we tend to do it a little less than we should do.
Thank you, Julia, as well. I'll go for the next question, and maybe I'll switch a little bit the order. Can you give examples of positive case studies in which end users were consulted and you had a good results coming out of it? If you have.
I can talk about actually another project that we undertook with the University of Salford. And we looked at some gap analysis within our neighbourhood policing teams, and we realised that there was a huge problem between handing over when a police officer leaves an area, a beat area. They tend to take the knowledge and the just that connection with them. It can break down trust, and cohesion with the community that we're serving. And so we needed to look at a solution of how we could do that better. Through some ethnographic study, we worked with officers on the ground and developed something called Community Connect, which was a handover protocol which allowed officers to hand over between each other in a live day together, to meet members of the community, to actually map those contacts and those facilities that were really important to the community, and hand that knowledge over to the new incoming officer, hopefully protecting the trust model that we had with the community and allowing a new officer to hit the ground running. So and that's kind of proved well, but needs a little bit more work on the implementation phase. So it's a really good and handy tool that's being used within Greater Manchester now.
I also have positive example, and it is something that I think all of you see every day, which is the automated external defibrillators. The ADs, the famous ADs that almost every building have today. I would say three very important things happened. I would start with the idea that the AEDs are there since the late 80s of the previous century, even though it sounds like, so they are 30 years old and they were not common. And that was a very great challenge. And there were, I would say, 2 or 3 things important that happened and which made this technology something which is readily available for everyone. First, and I would say this was the most important thing, was that the protocols, the treatment protocols for cardiopulmonary resuscitation, what we call CPR, changed to incorporate CPR into the process of doing CPR. And today you will go to every CPR class in the world and the trainer will talk about AD. It is not something separated. It's part of the overall process. And that was step number 1 that brought the technology in. The second thing was that the threshold was lowered to basically 0. You don't need to be certified to use an AED. The AED will guide you through the process. That was a key element that was added to the AEDs. No worries. You don't have to worry that you are going to do some harm, that you are going to do it wrong. Just open the device and the device will talk you through. And today we have, in many countries, Israel is one of them, where the AEDs are multilingual. You can choose what is the language you are comfortable with, and it will guide you through the process. And the third thing was the idea that today the AEDs are not just an AED. For example, in most of the places, they are placed in a cupboard that will automatically notify the emergency services that you opened it and took away the AED. Not because we are so worried about them being stolen, it happens, but not that much, but because we think that people under stress might forget to dial 112 or 911 or whatever, 999 in the UK to call the emergency services. So we say, okay, if someone took away the AED, we should send an ambulance there to verify what is going on, because we might have a real emergency that requires our intervention and people are late calling us. This whole concept, it is not just a technology, it's a process. It's making it as user-friendly as possible and making sure that we have an environment to support it. This is what makes the AED something that saves hundreds of lives every day all over the world.
Amazing. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe I can bring another perspective into it, because our biggest problem, I think, is to share information in time and very quickly. And if you would like to make my 5th slide, Ilat, we can see we can see it there, because we had some projects to bring information to different end users or to the society or to another police officers. In the State Office for Criminal, yes, thank you, this one. For criminal investigation, we have 1,500 employees, and at the whole police in Lower Saxony, one of 16 state polices, we have more than 30,000 police officers. And sometimes it's very important to bring the information, for example, for this example of urban security, into the field. Yeah, and we don't need the information just for the police officers, because we are working interdisciplinary also with the community, with the cities, city administration, and also with the crime prevention network. And we have 3 projects: transit, diversity, and cutting crime impact, where we worked on information. In transit, we developed a handout with specific questions for interdisciplinary collaboration. That means if the police and the city planner is sitting at the table and they have to talk about urban security, then sometimes they are nervous or they don't know what to say. They don't have an idea of the other aspects. And we give some ideas in this handout. If you are a police officer and you are in a crime prevention team, you can ask this or this. And then they could start the discussion, and it's more a door opener. In diversity, it was different, because we found out that in Germany, there is no database for projects, information, and necessarily things in the field of urban security. And we started until 2017, I think, with a database where we put a lot of information in. And now, after 6 years, we could switch the database to a national-wide German Prevention Council, and they would like to use the security database in the future. And the last one is a cutting crime impact project. There we have an application of the Insight Toolbox, where we can find out the feeling of insecurity from people which are not, it is not used for them to talk with the police about their feelings of insecurity. They just get in contact if there is a real crime or something happened. And with this toolbox, we can, and different methods, we can bring the experts in the perspective of the citizens, and they can make a walk around your hood, and they can decide where are places where might people feel unsafe. So these 3 case studies are very important, and I know that it needs years to be implemented also outside the Lower Saxony, outside the police. And now they started in North Rhine-Westphalia with this method box, and I think this is very useful, but it needs time. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Wonderful. So let me go for the next question. To your from your perspective as end users, what would be an indicator for an impactful innovation process? How would you define a successful one?
When my dinosaurs say I want it.
When, sorry, Chaim?
When my dinosaurs, those who have been with us for the last 100 years, like myself, say, this is something I want.
Great.
Okay. Should I take over, Julia, or would you like? Okay. So yeah, before I start to explain the indicators for an impactful innovation process, let me start very shortly.
Yeah, I'll share it.
Yeah?
I'll share the slide again.
Okay. Very shortly, with the identified barriers in my organization. One barrier is there is no research culture. The second one, there are little experience with interdisciplinary collaboration. We have an increased development of expert knowledge. This is not just in the police, also outside, for example, in architecture. As an art of building with social responsibility is increasingly moving in the direction of technical expertise in design, but not as far as implementation in construction management. You can see it, we have an expert for emission control, we have an expert for fire protection, for environmental issues, but no training for the social dimension and the comprehensive. I think this is really a problem in a lot of fields, also in the police. We have one for domestic violence, we have one for another expert. And we have an expansion of power knowledge and those fear of loss of importance. So people take their power knowledge with them if they are retired or something like that. But let me not just make negative statements. Let me get to the drivers or indicators for an impactful innovation process. We need a translation of the contents of the advertisements for the individual police departments. We have to find a solution that leads to the implementation and stabilization of results and the search of close allies of those responsible at the political level out of conviction for value creation is necessary and what I do with it. And we need a structural audibility. That means you have to be in a hierarchical position so that there is a chance to being heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say within British policing, again, more strategic level, we can measure impact of innovation and its success if it moves from one force to another force. So as I said earlier, there are 43 forces across the UK. And if we've had innovation within a force that has been successfully implemented and is seen to solve a problem, reduce a crime, or reduce what we call demand on our officers or on our force in general, our resources, then we would say that was a successful barometer of innovation. Secondly, we find that if innovation is a success, then the government will get behind it and they will also finance it. So it spreads through successful financial backing and also word of mouth. So not one of my projects, but a project in the south of England that looked at video response for domestic abuse victims who as a methodology for communicating with the force rather than sending a physical officer out to a potential victim. And that has had success in the force where it was conceived, and that has now spread beyond that force and into most of the 43 forces as a methodology. So it was innovative of its time, gained traction in that force, and then has spread beyond that one force into the other forces.
Fantastic. Thank you, Julia, for that. I will, before a few minutes, you discussed how drink spiking is like a local phenomena or a local challenge that you're facing. And I'm wondering if there are local challenges in Hanover and also in Israel from the point of view of first responders. I think it's also, it's very much related to the design brief that we published as part of the design challenge. One of them is specifically talking about safety and security during nighttime in public spaces.
Okay. Yeah, we have challenges, also local challenges. One challenge is a feeling of insecurity in public space, especially in public transport, by night or in darkness. So that's what we know, because we did a non-report questionnaire, a victim survey, and that's what the people tell us. They feel unsafe in the during their using their public transport. Then we have it is quite new there, feeling of insecurity concerning night attacks in public space. Maybe you have more experience in the last year. We have some of them, and this means it is also difficult to handle with people which have psychological problems, because I think the police is not really trained to get in contact with people who are very, it is more than a disorder in public space, yeah. And then we have a problem with disinformation and hybrid sabotage at the democratical system, even in the last month before our election last Sunday. And another problem is hate speech and attacks against rescue workers in the last years.
Outstanding.
Yeah, but for the public space, and maybe this is important for this student design challenge, this is really using or be mobile in public spaces, not just the public transport. It is also by bike or just moving around during the night.
Yes. Thank you, Anka. Chaim, do you also feel that there is attacks against rescue workers as a phenomenon?
There is a global issue of attack against healthcare workers. Yes. But, and this is the big but, talking to colleagues globally, the feeling is that it's related more to a general disrespect towards authority among certain groups and certain generations. I would use an example from Spanish, because in Hebrew we don't have these terms. In Spanish, for many, many years, the doctor will be called by the patient señor doctor or señorita la enfermera. They will never treat you on a first name basis. It was, when I was a kid, it was a no-no. No way you will call your teacher on a first name basis. No way you will call a doctor on a first name basis. Nowadays, culturally, if you treat the doctor as sir or ma'am, people will look at you like, where are you coming from? And this respect towards elderly people, towards authority, is also translated into violence. So and the problem in my mind is that we are trying to treat those issues through the lens of technology. Let's put more technology to protect them, where the source is very different. And I'm afraid that we are not treating the root causes of this violence against, I would call them civil servants in general terms. And I have to say that I would use the term pissed off. I'm pissed off when the excuse is, but that person was upset. He or she became aggressive against the caregivers because they were upset. So my answer is, okay, they should know better. to me, being upset is not, it's not an excuse to being violent.
Thank you. Our next question or topic would be, how is it from your point of view as end users to participate in an innovation team? I bet you have been approached many times. It's not the first time. And you must have some good insights about your perspective of it. Chaim, we discussed it in the past, so I know that you have a lot to contribute here.
I think that Anke mentioned something about it. And first of all, we need to understand that we are coming with very different sets of mind. A researcher wants to solve the problem, and if it takes 5 years, it's okay. As an end user, if I already have a problem, I don't have 5 years. On the other hand, I'm willing to accept the idea that the developers will come with a solution that will solve 20% of the issue, but it will be available in 9 months. And then I will have another 10%. I'm not looking for a perfect solution, because in 5 years' time, either the problem was solved by other means or we have another problem. We are accepting the idea that there will be an incremental approach. There will be an incremental approach to things, and I will be solving every time a small portion of the issue. And this is a very different set of mind if I look into classic research. The other issue which I would strongly, and sorry, I will get to that point in a second. The other thing is about language. We had, we laughed at the end of the project about it very much, but we were having real problems in a project with the term scenario. Because from where I'm coming, a scenario is a storyboard. You write me a story to trigger my thinking, and this is the beginning of the process of thinking about, okay, how are we going to approach this problem? If you have in the room with you IT people, for them a scenario is an algorithm. This happens, and then you have 2 solutions, and if you take the right one, then you have another decision point which will trigger 2 solutions, etc., etc. And we couldn't understand why we are not meeting one the other, because we use the same terms for very different things. So my last and most important point is you need to dedicate time, energy, and effort to try to clarify all these basic assumptions, the language that we use, the terminology we use, the way we think, before we dive into solutions. Otherwise, we keep going back to the very first point just because we don't understand one the other. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, Chaim, thank you very much. This is also very important for us. And there's another thing. Our police is driven by data. They are just looking at numbers. And they are just looking, is this kind of crime more important in this year than in the last year? But what is behind these numbers? And I think for us, it's always very important to see what is behind these numbers, because then if you don't do it, you don't have the right problem in front. Yeah, then you make correlations in Germany in the moment between migration and criminality. Yes, but the problem is not just this. The problem is, where does the migrants live? How are they involved in the everyday life? Do they can work, or do they have nothing to do? And we are always have the discussion in media about migration and criminality, and we can't find the real problem with this. So I think it's very important to be a researcher with an interdisciplinary approach and not just looking at these quantitative numbers of crime.
Thank you.
And lastly, from my perspective, I suppose I don't know if this is a term across the world, but it's definitely an English term that we use. I'm known as the black sheep within the herd. So unlike, I've got a really lovely photo of this, which I should have put on a slide for you. But because I'm a designer and don't come from a traditional policing background, my brain thinks differently, and I hadn't ever seen it before I joined policing. And as Anka has just described, we love data, we love numbers, and we base a lot of our resource and our actions on those numbers, as she quite rightly describes. We don't always look behind those numbers, and whilst numbers are very important to me, they're not the thing that I respond best to. So when I'm in a group and we are talking about innovation, or we are trying to bring innovation around, about a lot of policing is very traditional, it's very hierarchical, as James just talked about. We work in a ranked structure, so the person with the most authority in the room, the highest rank, tends to be the person who everybody agrees with. And again, my job I see as somebody who needs to come in and kind of challenge that decision making by rank. You know, it's my job to kind of come in and help to broaden the thinking process, the innovation process, to widen it, and to help British policing to actually embrace new colourful ideas, which they sometimes find a little bit difficult to move into a different way of doing things. And I think people like me, I'm not the only different person within policing. There are a lot of different people, but they can bring a different perspective, and that's really valuable.
Julia, there is another color for uniforms besides black?
I know, and I should have worn a different colour today. I've realised I have conformed.
So the design challenge, the student design challenge, is constructed with two design briefs. And if you could reflect about the current crime trends that would impact these briefs, one of the first brief is about safety in public transportation. The other one is safety at nighttime during public spaces. So Anka, if you want, I can put on your slide.
Yes, but I'm not very sure which one you mean. The last one?
No, the crime trends slide.
Ah, the crime trends. Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, I started with the crime statistic. This is just an image. This is not the real crime. I wouldn't use it, because then we can talk about how much is it this time in bodily harm. I won't do it. This is a crime statistic in the moment from the year 2023, because 2024 is coming next week or the week after. There you can see we have a lot of bodily harm, damage to property, and crime against the weapons law. So this is not a real question to the design challenge. I think after we did our criminological research and the unreported information about the victim survey, we can say hate speech is a problem. Hate speech not just online, also in person, and domestic violence. And domestic violence, maybe it seems like there is no connection to the public space, but we can build the public space to protect people and to give them a form of, I don't know, a form of background. Yeah, if people are victims of domestic violence, it must be very important that they can go out and they have a very good neighborhood, for example, or places where they can go and they can find help. And radicalization is also a problem. Night attacks, I told you, and the feeling of insecurity in public space, because the feeling of insecurity is another part than the crime rate. Normally, people feel insecure at places where is no crime. And also places where there's crime, the people don't feel unsafe, feel unsafe. So, so these are our trends, and I would be very happy if people can address this kind of crime trends concerning the question of what can we do in the public space to reduce the feeling of insecurity, for example. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Julia, do you have other crime trends, I guess, beyond
Drink
drink
spiking.
spiking?
Linked to drink spiking and kind of a broader area that drink spiking might sit in is known as violence against women and girls. This is an area, what we know is that violence against women and girls is disproportionate within our society. Within the UK, several years ago, there was a horrific murder by a police officer, a serving police officer, of a lady called Sarah Everard. And there was public protest, there was the communities reacted to that murder, rightly so, and identified that we weren't considering the violence that women and girls actually do suffer from within our society. And just like Anchor, we are suffering with issues on our public transport system. Violence in general is something that we are struggling with across the UK, particularly utilising the use of bladed weapons. We do have a lot of minors, children, who carry weapons. They carry weapons to protect themselves because they fear other people and other children carry weapons. So we are seeing child on child knife attacks. And those are, whilst rare, are increasing. So we are struggling with violence and violence with weapons. And then there are two other issues that I would talk about here in terms of rising trends. One isn't a crime in the UK, and it's called antisocial behaviour. Antisocial behaviour can incorporate many things. The police only deal with some antisocial behaviour. Our councils deal with other issues, but that is a rising type of incident for us. We know it's called an incident, not a crime. It's a rising issue. And the reason that I bring that up is because actually the patterns of antisocial behaviour across the UK do tend to demonstrate to us that that area, if it's high in antisocial behaviour, a hotspot location, is likely to become a hotspot for crime in the future. So if we can tackle antisocial behaviour, we would be able to reduce the issue of crime in the future. And lastly, retail crime, as it's known here. We have two types of retail crime: opportunist retail crime, so that might be somebody going into a shop and just stealing, and organised retail crime. Organised retail crime is becoming bigger and bigger through organised gangs attacking retail premises. And the problem with that is that British policing haven't got that as high on their agenda as perhaps we should have. So we are seeing that as an escalating crime type, because as soon as we allow a gap, the criminal fraternity will fill that gap and use it as an opportunity. They are, of course, a business like any other, and they will capitalise on opportunity where we are not filling that gap. So retail crime is my last one.
Thank you. Anka, please, you raise your hand. No? Okay. All right, so thank you. We will go for I think the last question before we open the mic to participants in the audience. And perhaps, Chaim, this one is for you. after crime happened, people might need to call 911 or like the EMS service. Do you see any shift in trends of reasons that people call you for help?
Yes, I think that one of the challenges, and I'm sure the colleagues in Germany and the UK see the same, is that, and I have to say, we are very happy about it. The threshold to call emergency service has lowered over the years. If our parents or grandparents would call an emergency service only if it is a really very, very serious issue, today people have a much easier finger on the 911 or 112 dial, which is something we are very, very happy with, especially when these calls come from younger people, from children. Children today know how to call emergency services, and this is something that I believe as emergency responders we should be extremely proud of. There is one worrying trend that we see, and it is related to social media. And young people think that if they post on Instagram, I need help, someone in the emergency services is actually looking into that, which unfortunately it is not true. We don't have the technology to do that. We need to be looking into that. And this is something that makes us really worry that someone will really need help, and instead of calling us, they will post it on social media, and we don't have a good solution for that. The other thing, in Israel, for example, the police has two numbers, 100 for emergency calls and 110 for if you need our police services, but it is not an emergency, please dial the other number. It doesn't have good enough results. It's really difficult to teach people to have two numbers in their heads and then make the choice and understand in a professional way if this is an emergency or a non-emergency. In Magen David Adom, we are looking into a smart bot that will allow us very quickly at the beginning of the call talk to the person and understand very fast if according to our criteria, if it should go to the emergency line or the consultants line. I think that their technology will be very, very helpful for us.
Thank you very much for that. And now I would like to invite people from the audience, and especially we have here with us Professor Caroline Davy and Professor Andrew Wooten, who are the scientific coordinators of the Engage2innovate project. Also Eran Lederman, Professor Mike Turner, and other partners of the Engage2innovate project. You are most welcome to join into this discussion and bring more topics in front of our end users.
Thank you. I've got a question which is for the LKA. I know that you've been involved in quite a number of EU-funded projects, and that we've had good engagement with the police officers within the LKA. Do you get the feeling that people are becoming more positive towards the idea of doing funded projects, either from the EU or from the national funding bodies, as a result of that positive experience?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. It is both. They are quite open for European projects because they can see that we developed some handbooks, information, and stuff which really helps. But the driven aspect is that we get money for it, and we can have researchers involved in the State Office for Criminal Investigation, because first we get money, and second we get people. And we have a very, very big problem with getting enough people to come to the police because of the democratical change, which we know from yesterday. But I think it is really the important thing, because then we can do more. And on the other hand, it's also good that it's driven by the money, because then they started to see it is very important to make research.
I think one of the things that was particularly good within the LKA and also within GMP is that you were able to employ researchers who are still there now, and they did such a good job because they were able to both do research but also be embedded within the organization, which gave them a level of insight and contact that you quite often don't have if you expect then outside researchers to understand a problem or an operational context.
Yeah, this is right. We will never implement the Competence Center for Urban Security without the research projects. And now it is a part of the State Office for Criminal Investigation. And the best is that other state offices from other states ask if they can have the same institution. That is very successful. Yeah.
Thank you, Caroline, for the questions. We are open to receive more questions from anybody in the audience now. Or other remarks from the respected end users here who might think that we've missed something. Carmel Edry, please.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm not turning my camera on because I'm a bit sick, so I will spare you that look. So I actually have a question for Julia. You talked about the subject of the spiking the drinks, so I was wondering how do you deal with it in the police, and how are you as a designer, how do you approach it?
So it's a really interesting question. And yes, you're right. We aren't just watching those numbers increase. We are trying to actually work with the community to see what we can do to help prevent it. So we've had two programs of work looking at this at the moment. One of those was a pack of safety products. So bottle top covers, drink top covers, and spiking test strips that we gave out to the student community when we realised that they were predominantly being victims of this crime type, but that we weren't actually hearing from them. We tried to proactively support them by putting together kits of safety products and then delivering them to halls of residence. So we did attempt to give them out in the nighttime economy, and then we realised that actually what happens when you do that is people tend to be a bit flippant and just sort of throw them everywhere. So we caused a lot of rubbish in the city centre, so that wasn't a good idea. So we learned from that experience, and we realised that what we needed to do was take those kits to the place of where the students are actually residing, particularly our new students to the city, and we supported them that way. We've carried on with this project, and we've now had quite a lot of funding for the test strips. So people tend to like those strips where they can actually dip the strip into their drink and test their drink themselves. So they don't need to put a cover on it, they don't need to protect their drink, but they're testing their drinks themselves. Has this been spiked? The technology behind those strips is a little bit temperamental. So I do need to put a caveat in there that perhaps it's not always the most effective. It does have a false negative rate. And in which case that's not great, but we wanted to improve the confidence that people had in the police to support them, and to be able to say, take these strips, keep them on your person, use them if you want to, report to us if you see anything, if you experience anything, come to us, we will help you. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're trying to work on that issue of reporting as well, giving people confidence to come to us, and allowing them to understand that they will be believed, they will be taken seriously. We do have specialist officers that will look after them. So there's lots of different things that we're trying at the moment.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you so much for your answer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
We've stunned everybody into silence.
Yeah. Or that we did a good job and covered everything. Okay,
Yeah.
Eran.
First of all, thank you very much for the interesting and enlightening conversation. And as someone who believes that the answers to the challenges faced by end users like you are in the conjunction between research and development, or in short, in design, how can you convey the information and guide the process through its swift complementation? And could you suggest ways to foster process with designers in a better way, or more better way? That's the question. Yeah.
I would jump in, and I would say that the issue is asking the right questions, the right people.
Yeah.
And when an anecdote in one of the projects, user requirements phase, and it was a decision support system for crisis management. That was the title of the project. And the IT people came and asked me, okay, what do you need? And my answer was coffee.
Yeah.
And they looked at us and said, what? I said, you cannot run a crisis if you don't have coffee and lots of it. And that became one of the jokes of the project, because, of course, they couldn't design an IT system that will make good coffee. And I think that this is one of the issues, because if you go to the field people and ask them, what do you need? The answers will always be around, the uniforms are not comfortable enough, they are too warm, they are too light, and we are cold. The boots are too heavy, and we have to carry too much equipment, which, Eran, is not the questions that you are asking. So you need to identify who has the knowledge inside the organization to answer the questions around the specific system or device that you want to design, and discuss what is the operational problem, and then you will have a meaningful discussion. I will remind you the first project when we first met, which was about a balloon that was very nice. Yes, the only problem is that the original design was the balloon was too light. So every small bits of wind will move it around. And for us, that's extremely frustrating. If I'm trying to put a needle into a patient, and I know that I have a certain amount of light, and then suddenly it shifts, and I'm in the shadow because there was a very light wind. So for others, it's not a problem. For us, it is. But you need someone that will understand that we are talking about a balloon in an emergency situation, how it helps me or not. And all the other discussions, with all due respect, I'm not trying to undermine them. They are not part of the issue we are trying to solve. And finding those partners for this dialogue, I would say that's key for a more effective design in our projects.
Yeah. Of course, the answer that you gave to the IT people was that you are tired and not concentrated, and you need some kind of solution for that. And coffee might be one of them, but not the only one of them. Yeah. But this, yeah, of course.
We definitely within GMP, and I know that Andrew and Caroline can talk much more eloquently on this subject than I, but I was probably an end user who experienced it when an issue that went wrong. And I won't go into the full details of how things went wrong, but we designed our own IT system, and instead of using a defined design process, and I know Andrew and Caroline talk a lot about the double diamond design process, we didn't use that. We fell into a classic trap of kept adding things on to the side and bolting on the issues as they came along, as the brief expanded and somebody else came along and said, what about this? And we kept adding more and more issues and trying to solve that with the same system. So we didn't develop the brief well enough, you know, and if I learned anything in my time as a designer, the brief is critical, and you really need to be able to say what it is that you're trying to achieve and lock that in a certain process, and then that's what you go forward with. That brief gets mission drift. I know that happens, but as a designer, you really need to know what you're actually trying to achieve, rather than that that balloon keep getting bigger, if we're going to use the analogy of balloons.
Thank you, Julia. Mike, please.
Yeah, thank you for some really exciting presentations. And I've also, unfortunately, I've been an end user, Chaim, for your activities, so I can say that they really have a lot of coffee, so it's really good. But I would like, our first webinar, we had David Weisbord, who is a specialist which really looks at the hotspots. So my question to you, Julia, is exactly what are the design issues which relate to the hotspots which you had actually made relevant, and how could this then deal with the aspects of urban design?
So in terms of urban design, that's a bit more. So what we do with hotspots is, first of all, we try and identify that hotspot. That's a huge challenge. It's easy to say, it's very difficult to do. As Anka described earlier, do we just go on numbers? Do we just go on data? Do we just go on police data? We need to define that at the beginning, and we try actually not to just go on police data. We try to actually bring in partner data so that we get a richer picture of what that data looks like. That's the first experience of hotspot. Then when we look at a hotspot, I tend to break things down, and you know, we do within what's called the prevention branch into the victim, the offender, and the location. So if we're looking predominantly here at the location, then the first thing I need to do is have an environmental visual audit. And I've got specialists within the team who will go out and they will undertake an environmental visual audit. And that gives me a real picture of what I've actually got. Then we dip into our criminology backgrounds, our theories, our understanding. And that's when, only after we know the problem, we know a lot more about the data, hopefully with more than just police data, do we then really look at what could we possibly implement in as a response. And hopefully, this isn't always possible because policing shifts at 1,000 miles an hour and they move on from a problem. We then go back over time and we look again and again and again to look at those challenges, have what we've implemented. Sometimes they've got to be quick, they've got to be cost effective, i.e. cheap. They've got to be not reliant on people, because we know that people will bring about failure, and take that as you will. When you need to have an end user that operates. We're not always going to get that to work properly. There's lots of different solutions and lots of different reasons that we will look at a hotspot location. It could be target hardening, it could be a location, but equally it might be that we concentrate on the offender profile. So we might look at how that offending's happening, why that offender's offending in that particular spot. Or we might concentrate on the victim. What is it about the victim that's making them victimized potentially, or a target for an offender? So we always try to keep to those three elements. Mike, does that answer the question? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Julia. Anka, please join us.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say something to Chaim also. My hope of this student design challenge, if you don't know that there is a balloon or there might be a balloon, then you can't see that this might be a good solution. So I hopefully look at the results and the process which are coming out of this student design challenge, because you don't have the cut in your head. Yeah, you are innovative and you can just do something. Of course, you have to involve the end users, but there might be a problem. If you ask a lot of end users, you will have a lot of problems, but no solution. And hopefully they won't stop their innovative a way of thinking, and then they can show us something, and then we can realize, oh, okay, that might be very interesting for us. So this is also a part which is very interesting in this design challenge, I think.
Yeah, we have, adding to that, Anka, we have in the past, and we still do it now, is work with children on some of our crime issues. We talk to groups of children and ask them what they would do, because they're far more intuitive with their responses, and they're not limited by our our cynicism with finance and no, that'll never work. They just do what they think will work, and actually you get some really, really good ideas. So it's the same thing, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you for all the discussions that were going around.